All right, everybody, it's Mr. Hunia, and today we're going to be talking about fats and oils. This is part two to our flipped classroom. Yesterday you guys did the modules related to fats, kind of exploring your own, and then did the job with sorting the fats into the different tiers. But now we're going to be looking at fats and oils, so these are your specific notes. Got the piano playing in the background, nice and wonderful. Want everyone to be happy and feel joyful as we go through this. So we're just going to power through these notes, and these are going to be useful and helpful for you studying for your test that will be taking place next Thursday. So let's get started. So one of the big things to talk about with fats and oils is cholesterol. And a lot of people get confused because cholesterol is not fat. However, it is a fat-like substance that is present in the body cells that is needed for the processes. It helps with the digestion of fat as well as the skin's production of vitamin D, a micronutrient which we will discuss later on. And it's made within the liver, and all animals have the ability to manufacture it. And this is one of the reasons why when you eat a lot of animals, or when you eat a lot of meat, poultry, fish, animals, you start consuming and having an intake of more cholesterol, because once again, animals produce cholesterol. All right, so and also things like egg yolks, liver, organ meats, as well as some shellfish, you'll also get your cholesterol there. And why is that important? And it's like, well, the types of fats we eat and what is within those fats are also what influences cholesterol. So you have what's called LDLs and HDLs. LDLs and HDLs are lipoproteins, and essentially they are just a type of cholesterol, a package of cholesterol that circulates within the blood. And a lot of times they are thought to be cholesterol, but they are not. Lipoproteins and cholesterol are two different things. And we are going to talk about LDLs and HDLs because having this in your blood is very important in understanding what it means. So first we have low-density lipoproteins, which takes the cholesterol from the liver wherever it is needed in your body. So for example, let's say that something happens on the arterial wall of one of your veins or something like that. Well, your body is then going to have cholesterol come through and help repair it, because that's part of what cholesterol does. It isn't actually a fairly decent thing for the body, provided you don't have large amounts of it. And low-density lipoproteins help move that cholesterol there to where they can make these types of repairs within the body. So the big thing is, if too much LDL cholesterol does circulate, the excess amounts can build up in the artery walls. And once again, this puts people at risk of heart disease and stroke, because it is harder for the blood to pump through with all that LDL buildup. And then the biggest thing that people need to associate is LDL as bad cholesterol. So if you think LDL, it's LDL like low. Low is bad, like it's low down, dirty, bad cholesterol. Low down, dirty, Dirty Dan, like SpongeBob. Yes. So low down, dirty, rotten cholesterol is LDL. But then we have HDL, which are your high-density lipoproteins. Now, LDL was good, so you can probably imagine that LDL was bad, so you can probably imagine HDL is going to be good. So this is where it actually picks up excess cholesterol in the blood and then brings it back to the liver, which keeps it from causing harm. So as we mentioned, LDL gets built up, and if it gets built up, it can clog arteries, all that good stuff, and then next thing you know, it can be putting people at risk for stroke and all of that kind of stuff. High density lipoproteins come in and take that cholesterol that was used and then takes it back to the liver, so it's not there anymore. So this is one of the reasons why LDL is thought to be known as the good cholesterol. So you do need to know that LDL is bad and HDL is good. This is very important for your test. Now, for most people, the amount and types of fats that eat have a greater effect on cholesterol than the actual cholesterol itself. All right, so this is very important to think about because there are fats in everything that you eat, and as you guys discovered in your module, there are different combinations of fatty acids. And we're going to talk about those really quickly. So we're going to talk about the types of fat that exist and then also make connections along with the effect on LDL and HDL. So you have the three that are right here, as well as one that we'll mention later, which is saturated, polyunsaturated, and monounsaturated. So saturated fatty acid. These appear to raise the level of LDL in the bloodstream. So these are things that are going to be like your meat, your poultry, your animal skins, the stuff that you find in animals, the stuff that is solid at room temperature, your butter, that kind of stuff. These are your saturated fats. And once again, it is important to have LDL to bring in cholesterol from the liver, but once again, we don't want too much of it. So in other words, consuming large amounts of these types of fats can be very, very bad. So you need to watch how much that we consume this, because remember, we don't want to raise our level of the quote-unquote bad cholesterol. So then we have polyunsaturated fatty acids. Now these are fats that lower the overall cholesterol levels. So if you have high levels of cholesterol, these are going to be things that you can consume that lower the overall cholesterol levels overall. Okay, it's straightforward and simple. Now, monounsaturated is also very important because they actually lower your LDL, which is a good thing, and then they help raise your HDL. So they're lowering the amount of LDL that can potentially clog up your bloodstream, and then they increase the level of HDL, which allows, once again, that lipoprotein to come through and then pull that cholesterol and take it back to the liver. So these are going to be foods like olives, olive oil, avocados, peanuts, peanut oil, and canola oil as well. So all fats include these three kinds of fatty acids, but once again, they are in varying amounts. So certain foods will contain more than others. As you saw from our little Kahoot that we did earlier, in some cases you can consume a whole meal and get all three types of fatty acids within one sitting. So each type of fat has a different effect on the cholesterol levels, as you saw. The biggest thing to recognize is that fats that are solid at room temperature are mostly considered saturated. So if you put butter on your potato or butter on a toast or something like that, that's your saturated. You look on a piece of meat and you got the fat that's sitting on the side of the steak that's attached to it. That's going to be your saturated fatty animal acids, that kind of stuff. And then finally, fats that are liquid at room temperature are typically considered to be unsaturated fatty acids. Now, why does this all matter at the end of the day? One of the big issues that come is the idea of hydrogenation. So hydrogenation is where missing hydrogen atoms are added to unsaturated fat to make it firmer in texture. If you guys remember, whenever you did your fat sorting, stuff like donuts, stuff like chips, things like French fries, things that were, for example, like Little Debbie cakes, things like that. All of these types of things, have a certain texture to them, and it is oftentimes created by the use of hydrogenation, which are considered trans fats. So when you hear about hydrogenated vegetable oil, hydrogenation, when you see things like that are kind of like doughy in an instance, like cookies and chips, donuts, typically there can be trans fats used in them. Now, the federal government has actually limited the amount of trans fats and eventually will ban it completely. But there are instances where food manufacturers are still allowed to use tiny, tiny, tiny amounts of trans fat within their production. So these are just some functions of fat that I'm just going to include here. Just go ahead and write one down, because as you can see, fat does a lot of different things. It does supply energy. It helps carry vitamins A, D, E, and K through the body. And when we discuss vitamins, you will know why specifically A, D, E, and K were mentioned. Does provide a reserve store of energy, promotes healthy skin, promotes your normal cell growth, and does act like a cushion and heat regulator to protect your heart, liver, and other vital organs. Fat is very important, and it also helps you feel fuller longer, as well as adds flavor to food. Okay, fat does have a lot of functions. You just have to write 3 down for your notes, and it's very important that we know this. As we continue and we watch Fatheads, you will hear more about why fats are also very important. But too much, as always, can be a bad thing, because we do tend to eat a lot more than we should. And then also the wrong kinds. And this, once again, does increase the risk of health concerns. So, for example, when you're looking at heart disease, obesity, cardiovascular related problems, cardiovascular being all about the heart, this is where high-fat diets become linked to these sort of things. All right, they are considered to be there. And when you think about it from the standpoint, these are considered to be high-fat diets. They're also considered to be diets high in saturated fat. All right, and this is what can really lead to this. Once again, we are not saying that all fat is bad. We are not saying that fat is terrible, because as you guys see, it does provide, great things in terms of cholesterol, and it does do great things for your body. But once again, overdoing it is considered to be a dangerous thing, regardless what it is, whether it's carbs, whether it's fat, whether it's vitamins, whether it's minerals. Overdoing it can be dangerous. So then, lowering fats and cholesterol in the diet. First off, obviously exercise. Replace saturated fats with unsaturated fats in the diet, so you can still get those fats as well. Choosing the leaner cuts of meat, but once again, if you want to have some saturated fats here and there, it's not a bad thing unless your diet truly calls for it. Steam, boil, or bake foods instead of cooking them in oil or fat. And then, once again, there is no handout, but this is the end of the PowerPoint. So at this point, turn in your notes. We will begin watching Fathead, and I want you guys to really take this in terms of what it could really mean and how these notes relate to the movie.